Good evening, friends. This is Ted Wilcox. Tonight, we invite you to lend an ear to a tale spun from the very fabric of our American century. A tale of mystery, magic, and the men and women caught between both. And to guide us through it all is the voice of our very own Charlie Poacher.
Thank you, Ted. Ladies and gentlemen, the year is 1951. 8 decades have passed since the great revelation when 9 scientists proved beyond question that magic and the beings who wield it were not myth, but reality. Now, 80 years on, magic and the mythic races are no longer wonders, but daily complications in the lives of ordinary citizens. And as America stands at a crossroads of history, still healing from a world war, already entangled in a new conflict abroad, and staring straight down the barrel of a far colder one with the Soviet Union, our story begins on a dark, lonely stretch of California highway. There, a single car cuts through the gloom at breakneck speed, racing toward the glowing hills of San Francisco. What drives this man to tempt fate? What danger waits at journey's end? We'll find out now.
This is the Mythic Chronicles. Entry 1. Crime Wave. Prologue. The Franklin Incident. Contact. October 9th, 1951. The wind outside Walter Franklin's Jaguar Mark 7 shrieked as the speedometer needle edged toward 120 miles per hour. He was late. Not just late. Too late. Egregiously late. The kind of late that earned nights on the couch and a month of never hearing the end of it. Again. Damn it. Gritting his teeth, Walter leaned forward in his seat, as if sheer will might push the car faster, eyes locked on the stretch of Bayshore Freeway ahead. The city lights bled together in streaks of gold and white, distorted by speed and the low hum of the Jaguar's crystal-powered engine. Brake lights flared. 2 delivery trucks crawled ahead, side by side, blocking both lanes. Damn it! The Jaguar shuddered beneath him, its newly installed CN power crystals whirring as he closed the distance. Close enough to read the red Blazion logo. He leaned on his horn. Nothing. The right lane truck crept forward. He shifted behind it, and the left surged ahead. Cut him off. His grip tightened on the wheel. These sons of bitches were doing this on purpose. They had to be. Unbelievable. He jerked the wheel, shifting behind the right truck as it inched ahead. And then the left surged forward, blocking him again. Gods damn it! Walter's grip tightened on the steering wheel until the leather creaked. Without taking his eyes off the road, he pulled his cigarette case from his jacket, slipped one between his lips, flicked his thumb. A small flame danced to life at his fingertip. He leaned into it, lighting the cigarette in one practiced motion. The spark faded as quickly as it came, leaving a faint numbness in his fingers. He shook out his hand and took a long drag. Smoke filled the car. With another curse, he cracked the window. Cold air tore the smoke and the quiet away. It wasn't fair. Evelyn knew how important his work was. When Lloyd Pembach, fresh-faced API board member and Cloud9's golden boy, flew out to Missouri to offer him the director role at the American Power Institute's Supermagnetron Testing Center, it was her who convinced Walter to take the job, to pack up their lives, to leave everything behind, to join the throngs heading west, San Francisco. And now this was how she repaid him, with a slow, torturous death by 1,000 pointed remarks. He was the father of pneumatachyon wave calibration theory for Nine's sake. Other backward-looking researchers wasted time and grant money making spells easier through glyphs and sigils. His work, applying scientific principles like microwave calibration to spellcasting, was changing the world. Yet she insisted on clinging to Tuesday family dinner nights. If she wanted him home on time, why insist on living in the city? He'd never be late if they lived closer to the API campus. He said that, repeatedly. This wasn't his fault. This was her fault. Johnny's face flashed in his mind, disappointed, quiet. Sure, Walt. And all those promises you broke over the years? How do they fit into this fantasy? Who's to blame for them? The right lane truck pulled ahead, creating just enough space. Walter slammed the pedal to the floor. The Jaguar's new CN power crystals whirred as he shot for the opening. The truck's horn blared. He nearly lost control, but he yanked the wheel left, squeezing through the narrow window and onto the clear highway, and onto open road. Heart pounding, he grinned as he kept the pedal floored and roared ahead, watching the truck's headlights shrink into the distance. "Eat dust, assholes." Then his eyes flicked to the clock, and his grin vanished. It hadn't always been like this. The job at API had thrust him into the rarefied air of magi-tech's elite, launching him and Evelyn into a world both dazzling and alien. They'd attended galas, rubbed elbows with the country's elite, real movers and shakers. The glamour, the prestige. It had been intoxicating. And all it cost, he thought, keeping his foot firmly pressed on the gas, was your family. Another damn truck slowed in front of him at the worst possible moment. His tires screeched as he slammed the brakes. With the new position came new demands. API wasn't just a research institute. It was a business. And like any business under Cloud 9, it demanded results, deliverables, performance. Desperate for balance, he'd hired Malcolm as an assistant. Walter gripped the wheel hard enough to make the leather creak as a shiver ran down his spine. Malcolm had been brilliant, driven, loyal. Walter had mentored him, come to rely on him. Long hours in the lab, bound by the interests of the Cloud 9 board, and united by the dream of shaping the future, they grew close. One night, they took a break, had dinner, drank too much, and things just sort of happened. The first package arrived a few months into the affair. It contained photographs, damning ones. Images that wouldn't just destroy his marriage and end his career, they'd guarantee his arrest. What followed after that was a week of paranoid dread, waiting for the other shoe to drop. For someone to show up at his door, at the lab, and speak the words that would collapse his world. But the week passed, then 2, then 3, and Walter began to hope. Maybe whoever sent the photos had reconsidered. Maybe they got bored. Maybe it wasn't worth the trouble. Maybe, just maybe, he'd imagined the whole thing. In that lull, he ended things with Malcolm, focused on doing right by Evelyn and Jonathan, and even promised to be home more often. He surprised them with a trip to Hawaii. They laughed, played. It was like old times, like they were a family again. Until, just over 2 months after the blackmail began, he returned to his office and found another envelope waiting on his desk. That night, he spoke with Mr. Jones for the first time. The message was simple. Hand over his findings, along with any other confidential API materials, via a designated route. In return, he could keep his life. He made his first drop that evening. From that day on, his life became a cycle of sporadic demands, followed by long, unsettling silences, always waiting for the next contact. Tonight's delay came from yet another such errand. This one all the way in Oakland, and the circuitous return route, as dictated by the instructions, only added to his tardiness. He finally reached his exit at 9th Street and wove north along El Camino Real, climbing the hills toward Washington. From there, he turned west onto Jackson, the sprawl of the Western Addition shifting around him as he neared home. The familiar silhouette of their Edwardian house came into view. Nestled across from Alta Plaza Park, its warmly lit windows usually felt inviting. Tonight, they glared at him with disapproving judgment. He slowed the Jag as he approached. What in all the hells? A Mercedes-Benz blocked his spot on the driveway. Fuming, he circled the block and found a space near the park. Why was someone in his spot, on his driveway? Glaring at the offending vehicle, he paused. He'd seen that car before. It was Frank Janoff's. Why is... Walter smacked his palm to his forehead. That's right. Tonight wasn't family dinner night. They'd changed plans. Evelyn was at the theater with the Janoffs. Esmeralda was watching Johnny. A lopsided smile tugged at Walter's lips. He was off the hook. Practically skipping up the stairs, he basked in the house's warm, welcoming glow. He stepped inside, missing the scattered mail at his feet until a large envelope crunched beneath his shoe. "Hi, honey," he called, bending to pick it up. "Walter?" Evelyn responded from the next room. Is that you? Footsteps hurried toward him. How was the show? Are Frank and Rose still? Where have you been? She cut in, her voice sharp. Walter's temper flared, but with the Janoffs hovering behind her like buzzards, he forced himself to stay calm. I just got home, what's... Nobody's here, she snapped again. The house was dark when we arrived. Walter frowned. What? He said, more sharply now. Dark? Where's Esmeralda? Evelyn shook her head. That's what I'm saying. I don't know. There's no one here. A thought tugged at the back of his mind, but the panic in her voice shoved it aside. How long have you been home? He asked. A few minutes ahead of you. A few minutes? He repeated, a small smile touching his lips. He glanced at Frank Janoff, who returned the look. They could say the great revelation had closed the gap between the sexes all they wanted, but the dramatic tendencies of the fairer sex still reared their heads now and again. So how are you sure no one's home, dear? The lights were on upstairs. They're probably up there. You know how Johnny likes to play before bedtime. He kissed the top of her head. Why don't you check while I pour us some drinks? I want to hear all about the show. Evelyn hesitated, her cheeks coloring, before she nodded. All right, she said, turning toward the stairs. Walter chuckled as he moved to the wet bar, setting the mail on the counter. Now, who wants a brandy? He asked, eyes drifting to the large envelope he'd stepped on earlier. It had no postage and no return address. Just the words, to the parents of Johnny Franklin, scrawled in blocky letters. That's odd, he thought, and flipped it open. Inside was a note, a scrap of fabric that reminded Walter of one of Johnny's school ties, and a lock of dark brown hair. He frowned, and his gaze dropped to the note. The same handwriting read, We have your son. If you want him back, you will do everything you are told. We'll be in touch. Walter blinked. The words were simple, but they made no sense. Have your son. The bottom dropped out of his stomach. It was suddenly hard to breathe. His mouth opened, but no sound came. What? But Johnny was upstairs. Then footsteps thudded overhead, and Evelyn screamed.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Mythic Chronicles. The story continues every Tuesday and Thursday. If you're enjoying the journey, please consider rating and reviewing the podcast. Your words might help bring more mythics into the fold. To listen ahead, unlock bonus content, and gain access to VIP Discord roles and behind-the-scenes updates, check out our Patreon or visit us at SeanTLaffertyBooks.com. I'm Sean. Thanks again for being here.